Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tizengozan. June 18th. Here are the main news stories at this moment. While the Moscow oil refinery is still burning, I'll talk about that a bit later, Putin is laughing it up in Kazan at the summit and generally having a good time. Just like back then when the Kursk submarine sank. Remember, Putin didn't even interrupt his vacation in Sochi. I'll show you a video in a moment, but honestly, it's like the most awkward replicant ever. Putin arrived in Kazan, and meanwhile in Moscow there are explosions, black rain, and Putin is in Kazan at this time. And who even arrived in Kazan? What kind of shoddy replicant is this? What is this whole world? By the way, there are already shots of the burning Moscow oil refinery, but he didn't even notice, and this guy is just sitting there laughing. And do you know what Peskov replied? That he hasn't been briefed yet and doesn't know anything about it. What's going on in Moscow? Did something happen? He said it with a straight face. So here's a piece of news that brings an involuntary smile to every Ukrainian's face. Moscow is on fire. More precisely, the Moscow oil refinery. And it's not just burning, it's blazing, exploding. The storage tanks are on fire, Muscovites are in shock, everything is covered in smoke. In short, just the way you like it. There were about a dozen direct hits, and the drones were of completely different types too. First of all, I want to thank the people of Moscow. The footage is shot really well, and instead of retelling everything, it's probably better to see it for yourself. I think some of you have already seen parts of the video, but you could watch this endlessly. In this video, at the 13-second mark, pay attention to how the lid of a huge storage tank gets blown off. It flies up dozens of meters. By the way, it was Russian air defense that hit the tank. Take a look. The lid, this has become a real meme generator. Some people are joking that aliens have landed in Kapotnya. These kinds of posters are popping up. The most protected oil refinery in Russia, maybe even in the world, just 16 kilometers from the Kremlin. This video that I just showed you completely shatters all of Putin's fairy tales about everything being under control. Nothing is under control. Everything has long since gotten out of control. This refinery, which is now going to be out of commission for a long time, 40% of the fuel, it supplied Moscow, 70% to the entire Moscow region, completely knocked out of operation, as they say. Right before our eyes, the sacralization of Russian power is being undone. The myths that Putin's propaganda built up over decades are being destroyed. By the way, some Russian bloggers who started expressing outrage, asking how all this happened, where the air defense was, have already begun deleting their posts. Apparently, the FSB guys showed up at their homes. One of the Russian bloggers, by the way, even wrote that there's nothing to worry about. When something flies into your own home, that's when you'll have something to worry about. There's another important point. There's a practice among Russian special services. In order to cover up some event or distract attention, they might do something even more shocking. And of course, they always find someone to pin it on. Remember the Ryazan sugar incident when the FSB was blowing up apartment buildings with Russian citizens inside at night? By the way, those explosions were specifically aimed at boosting Putin's approval ratings. Now is the perfect time to distract attention and once again raise his ratings. In general, Putin is a record holder when it comes to destroying his own people. The very people, by the way, who elected him. Friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important and you can do it right now. We are fighting against Putin's propaganda. There are already 514,000 of us on the main channel. Thousands. And together, we can fight Putin's propaganda much more effectively. So be sure to subscribe. And one more important point. On June 16th, that is, the day before yesterday, our drone already struck. That's why back then propagandists, including Solovyov, were saying, "Oh, it's just one drone, nothing serious, hundreds were shot down, only one got through." But today, that whole illusion of protection has collapsed. In the previous episode, I mentioned that from the plant in Kapotnya to the Kremlin, it would take our drone 5 to 6 minutes. But that's not the objective. In other words, all these drones could have easily reached the Kremlin, but that's not the goal. The goal is to strike at Putin's war chest. And I think that today most Russians started to wonder for what and why. All of this. No one ever asked them, should we start a war with Ukraine? No, we shouldn't. The decision was made by a handful of senile old KGB men. Russians, take power into your own hands. It will be easier for us to come to an agreement with you. Get rid of this Botox mold, and let's solve one more little problem together. I have a wonderful photo from the burning Moscow oil refinery. Here it is. Write in the comments how many fire sources you counted in this photo. In other words, how many Ukrainian drones hit the target. And last night, out of spite, the Russians even launched 2 ballistic missiles at the Kiev region in the morning. They wrote in their Telegram channels that they hit a fuel and lubricants depot in Borispil. That's the kind of response they got. Now they'll also fire the Oreshnik somewhere at some garages. It's clear they'll launch missiles in response, but this can't be undone by anything. Now Moscow and the Moscow region will be left without gasoline. And the SBU, the Service of God, announces a strike. At the Moscow oil refinery, not only the tank farm was hit, but also the primary crude oil processing unit and the diesel fuel hydrotreating unit. That's it, it's over. In simple terms, Muscovites have a little time left to stock up on gasoline and diesel. It'll be even worse than in Crimea. And in every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the Ukrainian Defense Forces. Today, our fundraiser is probably more on topic than ever. We are continuing our major fundraiser for the Active Operations Unit of the GUR, the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine, specifically the FERRATA unit. This unit specializes in complex multi-level tasks, including those involving drones, surface, underwater, and aerial UAVs. So let's help our fighters. And by the way, today the GUR also took part in the operation striking the Moscow oil refinery. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There are mono and PayPal options for those who want to help from abroad, and the fighters have recorded a video. Please take a look.
Підрозділ активних дій ГУРМО «ФЕРРАТА» дякую Борису Тізенгаузену та його підписникам за допомогу, яку ви надаєте Збройним силам, і просить вас про підтримку наших зборів на автомобілі. Автомобілі – це важливо на фронті, це евакуація, це логістична підтримка наших підрозділів, це підвоз БК, провізії та дронів нашим хлопцям, які стримують ворога на фронті. Просимо вас підтримати наші збори, цінуємо вашу підтримку і допомогу. Слава Україні! Героям слава!
Let's help our GUR Active Operations Unit fighters. Iraq, the link is in the description. And if you're watching on another channel, the QR code also leads to the fundraiser. Thank you so much for supporting our warriors and for supporting Ukraine. About 500 flights are being delayed at Moscow airports due to the drone attack, according to Russian social media channels. The tears are actually making it hard to speak. Here's another interesting point. It wasn't just the fierce drones that attacked the Moscow oil refinery today. I saw footage of several drones, Baz-type drone missiles, flying over Moscow, so there was quite a bit of variety there. Do you know what else this means? A successful attack on the Moscow oil refinery in Kapotnya? It means that Ukraine can now also leave major Russian cities, including Moscow and St. Petersburg, without heating and electricity in the winter. Have Russians ever looked at the issue from this angle? Putin will always have light, heat, and fuel. But how will ordinary Russians get through this winter? After all, it's colder there than in Ukraine. And the most popular question among Muscovites right now is, what's going on? By the way, Solovyov stated directly on federal television that the responsibility for the consequences of strikes on Moscow does not lie with the air defense system, but with the Muscovites themselves. He also called for the immediate arrest of those who film and distribute videos of the aftermath of strikes on Moscow and the Moscow region. It seems to me that Solovyov, this scoundrel, will be taken down by his own people. And thanks to the fact that Muscovites have finally learned how to properly film the strikes, we now have a lot of excellent videos. Let's watch a video called A Typical Morning for a Muscovite.
А чё они забомбили-то нас? Вон он летит. Ой, там где-то.
Смотри, вон еще летит. Смотри, сейчас прилетело. За Сибирью.
А где все? Я не понимаю. Вообще их... Ой. Ловиты будут, нет? Или...
Beautiful. So why did they bomb us? Really, right? Well, here's an important nuance. Not you, but the oil refinery. I think many have noticed that if Ukraine acted like Putin, today several entrances of Moscow apartment buildings would have been destroyed, but Ukraine strikes military targets. Let's watch another video. Panoramic, beautiful. So now, who should we thank for these wonderful videos? Today, the unmanned systems units were at work. Kairos, Ptaki, Magyar, Raid, Nemesis, Special Operations Forces, the SBU, and the GUR. In general, as Magyar says, the conveyor of retribution is working. Well, now it's clear that the underground heel will crawl out of his suitcase room. From that room, he'll make a statement, something like, "We will show everyone." He'll take revenge on them, strutting around on those 7-centimeter heels. He'll show off, saying, "We'll show everyone," and cluck, 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 and so on. And tomorrow, more drones will fly into Russia and destroy that Moscow oil refinery to the ground. So tomorrow, Muscovites will be standing in kilometer-long lines for gasoline, listening to Putin telling them that everything is completely under control. So there we are. In Bila Tserkva, a fuel and lubricants depot was bombed, and in Brovary, another fuel and lubricants depot. Will that save Muscovites? Or will it save anyone in occupied Crimea? I don't think so. Putin is rapidly sliding into the abyss along with his country. Or rather, he's dragging it there himself. He's racing downhill on a Desna bicycle. I used to have a bicycle like that, a Desna. But its chain came off, but Putin doesn't know that yet. I really like this analogy. This comparison with childhood, the bicycle and the chain coming off when you're racing downhill, that happened to me a couple of times. It's time to brake, so you push the pedals backward, because back then the brakes were on the pedals, and you realize that suddenly the pedals start spinning very easily. And that's it, a chill runs down your spine. So Putin is racing downhill on his bicycle, his chain has come off, but he doesn't know it yet. What do you think when the Russian Ministry of Defense comes out today or tomorrow? What will they say? They've occupied yet another settlement in Ukraine, which is now just a pile of bricks. Will this somehow cheer up Russians after Kapotnya or not? The war has come to Moscow, and we haven't even started yet. You know, I think now Ukraine can say, we haven't even started yet. This is just the beginning. It will get much worse for Russians. That's it, believe me. And ballistic missiles are still on the way. By the way, even now, Russian media still don't know how to comment on this attack. I go to RBC, and there's silence. They only had advertisements there. A map of Moscow's summer cinemas where to watch movies outdoors. And soon you'll be watching movies outdoors everywhere in Moscow. A horror movie with real immersion. By the way, after every massive strike, Ukraine and the Russians claim that they hit assembly and launched sites for drones. According to today's report from the Russian Ministry of Defense, today they allegedly managed to shoot down, in one day, 992 drones. About 200 over Moscow and the Moscow region. What kind of mystery is this, I wonder? You destroy the assembly and launch sites with your strikes every time, right? According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, these are the drone assembly and launch sites. And with each passing day, more and more are flying over Russia. By the way, when Russia runs out of oil refineries, what are you going to use to shoot down Ukrainian drones? Putin arrived in Kazan under heightened security. In addition to the traditional Federal Protective Service escort, he is now also guarded by people in camouflage and special tactical gear. The Botox coward. Well, now for the news of the century. Russia will begin importing fuel by sea due to a gasoline shortage caused by Ukrainian strikes on oil refineries. The first shipment from Asia is expected as early as June. The Russian Federation is also buying fuel from Belarus and Kazakhstan, but these volumes are not enough. Could you have ever imagined something like this? The gas station country will be buying fuel from Asia. Everything is under control, Russians. Don't worry. Now regarding the drone that struck a bus carrying Belarusian children on the territory of the Russian Federation. There are already plenty of analyses online explaining why it couldn't have been Ukraine. I won't go into detail, starting from the distance of almost 50 kilometers to the absolute inconsistencies in the initial versions from the Russian side. In short, those analyses exist, but that's not what I'm talking about right now. Why is it that right now in Russia they're so actively pushing the narrative that Ukraine was so malicious, deliberately waiting for a bus with Belarusian children? Because just a few days ago, Lukashenko did something that absolutely infuriated the Kremlin. He publicly stated that Belarus is not going to enter the war against Ukraine. And he also apologized to Zelensky for his previous statements. And then suddenly the story about the bus with Belarusian children appears. So the main target of this campaign, it was not Ukraine, it was Lukashenko. They're trying to drag him into the war. Well, Lukashenko stayed silent for a long time, but today he finally spoke out. Do you know what he said? That the drone might be Ukrainian, but who launched it, where it was bought, it's unclear. He also added that there are a lot of conspiracy theories about it and it needs to be investigated. And then he added a very interesting phrase. Those who needed to, they heard it. He also stated that the Russians could have used Ukrainian FPV drones to strike the bus. In other words, he voiced the Ukrainian version. He says it needs to be investigated. For Lukashenko, this is simply unheard of boldness. That is, if Lukashenko says things aren't so clear-cut in his language, that means he knows exactly what's going on about the Russian provocation and what it was for. And one more thing, a statement from Lukashenko. Attempts, literally, attempts at provocation and drawing Belarus into the conflict between Russia and Ukraine will end badly for the initiators, Lukashenko said. But who is the main initiator who is interested in dragging Belarus into the war with Ukraine? Who is the main stakeholder? What do you think? Apparently, old Kabayev has decided to go all in, and now, even someone as cunning as Lukashenko couldn't take it anymore. And one more video. Do you think Russian television has already hit rock bottom? I came across this video and at first I thought it was artificial intelligence. On the federal NTV channel, they suggested planting illegal substances on American rappers in order to add them to the exchange pool and trade them for Russians. This is not a joke. The host is Russian, well known. On NTV, they stated that rappers have started coming to Russia more often, most of whom, this is a direct quote, use that very word starting with N that you can't say in the US. They said all of this on air. I'm going to show you this video now. So, according to the host, black rappers always use substances, so they should be set up with some drugs, imprisoned, and then exchanged for Russians in foreign prisons. This is federal TV. Let's watch this segment.
Давайте я буду более провокационен,
Чем
даже,
я?
чем ты. Я попробую.
Так.
К нам в последнее время стали ездить рэперы. Почти 100% из них это негры из США. Вы меня, конечно, простите.
А вы по расовому признаку предлагаете?
Ну, блин, ну что ты вечно лезешь ко мне с этими своими?
То есть был бы он
Ты
белый...
можешь дослушать
То есть был бы он белый...
Дослушать ты можешь?
Был бы он белый, он бы вас и
Дослушать
заинтересовал.
можешь меня?
Слушаю, да, все, да.
Они все употребляют вещества. Ну, слушай, только не надо мне
То есть,
говорить.
потому что типа черный, поэтому все употребляют вещества.
Черные рэперы всегда употребляют вещества. Я сказал, что я более...
Минутка расовой
Ой,
ненависти
значит так,
сейчас.
давайте мы им
под...
подбросим наркотик.
Ну,
Немножко.
сейчас такой козырь нашим противникам
Ну,
даёте,
нет, это
что
классическая...
смахивает на
Это
диверсию
классическая история,
идеологическую.
Андрей Владимирович. Это классическая
Послушайте,
история.
Просто это вырежут
послушайте меня, Максим Анатольевич.
и покажут, что вот
Послушайте
мы все
меня.
такие.
Глеб Егорович Жиглов подбросил кирпичу кошелек. Да, кирпич совершил в этот момент преступление, да, мы знаем. Но мы сейчас боремся с преступной практикой государства по отношению к нашим гражданам. Значит, все средства хороши.
Ну, она-
Я предлагаю вам обсудить этот вопрос. Георг Валерьевич, пожалуйста, заклеймите позором меня. Скажите, что я тварь.
То есть вы про черных черного спросили. Хорошо,
Заметьте.
хорошо.
Так,
Значит,
так,
ну,
Ваня, что ты радуешься?
Нет, я не радуюсь. Просто я не ожидал.
No.
They're just, I don't know, caveman Nazis, chauvinists on federal TV. This is the kind of nonsense they're spouting. But don't forget, according to Russian propaganda, all the Nazis live in Ukraine. And in their wards, there's a commotion going on. State Duma deputies Gurulyov and Zhuravlyov said that it's time to stop fighting like children, not for real. We need to attack for real. That's interesting. We need to strike the enemy mercilessly. We need to strike, destroy the entire leadership, crush everything. Yes. In that ward, they're really having a flare-up after the strike on the Moscow oil refinery. Our segment, Questions from Muscovites. Now, this will probably become a regular segment. Today, Muscovites were asking questions. Why aren't there any sirens? Why aren't there any SMS or alerts about the alarm? Really, why is that? In general, as I understand it, Putin's plan is just brilliant, isn't it? And where is that Spiro cheat? Did it hide? So why didn't it urgently come to Moscow? Didn't return, didn't say, it's just sitting there laughing. Come on out, Russians. People are asking you questions here. Here's another question I saw from Muscovites today. Let me quote it. What will happen if, instead of these relatively slow Ukrainian drones, something else appears in the sky? Storm Shadow, Scalp, Taurus, Tomahawks, and all the other high-precision delights from NATO that will break through the air defenses. And all the modern electronic warfare systems won't stop them. But really, what will happen? Are you planning to fight NATO over there? Meanwhile, Trump stated that Ukraine is doing quite well in the war against Russia, despite the significantly greater resources of the Russian army. Donald, sell us some more proper weapons and we'll show you things you haven't even imagined. By the way, I get the feeling that Trump is actually a bit afraid that Ukraine really could defeat Russia, especially if weapons are delivered on time. Yeah, and I have a feeling he's not the only one who's worried about that. I also think that the Kremlin really regrets not shutting down the internet completely right at the moment of the attack. They could just tell stories now, write in the newspaper Pravda, or on TV, Solovyov would be saying that the so-called special military operation has actually already brought Russians to the outskirts of London. Just a little more and we'll defeat the Anglo-Saxons. Well, friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, subscribe to this channel, don't forget, and let's help our fighters from the GUR FERRATA unit. The link to donate is in the description of this video. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.